Hi, everyone. Uh, I am Merve Balki. I'm the channel system engineer in Canada at Palo Alto Networks. So first of all, thank you for having me here, for Mahdi Raza, for inviting us to the event. And I'm really excited and happy to see a lot of women in the room, especially in the cybersecurity field, right? So we don't see a lot of women, you guys know. So, and so today I'm going to talk about why consolidation is really imperative while organizations are going through that cyber transformation. So as you all know, the digital transformation is most popular topic right now when we work with our customers. So it's actually accelerating more and more. And resilient and reliable, the digital transformation can only be achieved, when we have a strong foundational background for the cybersecurity. So, and there's a lot of changes happening also in the world, as we know, right? From industry dynamics to microeconomics, right? Global crisis, right? Inflation rates, interest rates, and all that kind of stuff we're all going through, right? So CISOs, security leaders, right? Executives, we're all pressured to do more with less. So most of you are probably familiar about the key trends impacting the cybersecurity here. So first, there's a massive shift to the cloud. So we're not only talking about only one cloud, we're talking about multiple clouds that customers are moving. And like AWS, Azure, GCP, and so on. And then during the pandemic, right, there is a nature of the work has changed fundamentally. For me, to be honest, there's nothing much changed because I've been working from home for a while, for a long time. But for most of the industries, government workforces, right, commercial workforces, medical, right, hospitals, there are basically, their style change how they work. So work is not like that we go is a place anymore. It's like an activity, basically. So, and with that, also, there's a lot of trend landscape, continues to evolve. There's sophisticated more and more, and attack surfaces got larger and larger, right? So, and those cyber criminals are very evasive. And what we're seeing today is that they're really using every angle of the attack vector to get the job done. Oops. So, as you see, the numbers are really high. So we talk about the shift to the cloud, and what we have seen recently, we're seeing a lot of increase in the cloud incidents. So we're not only talking about those on-premise devices, those moving the on-premise devices to the cloud, but we're also talking about shift left. So DevNet, SecOps, right? So, and those programmers, software developers, when they're doing those coding and doing those applications, basically, we have to really integrate the security in the software development cycle, right? So there's a lot of cycles in the cloud. And then when we move to the nature of the work has changed fundamentally, so IoT devices has been increasing. It's lately, there's a lot of cyber criminals, attacks, the exposing those attack vectors, right? And then if you look at those attack groups, so I've been reading a lot lately, so there is really great availability of the tools for those attackers. So for example, Cobalt Strike, probably you guys know about that, right? It has been there for many ages. And in the last year, we have seen a massive growth in the Cobalt Strike attacks. And then there is Brute Retail. There's a lot of names, so I can't really keep up with them. They're similarly same, but they're more evasive. They're more kind of using different techniques, and it really has more capabilities. And if we look at the dynamic range of that attack groups, they're basically shifting those teams, shifting those groups, and ransomware attackers are basically creating those new attack groups, like Lapsus. I don't know if you ever heard about Lapsus group. So, and they are really leveraging those social engineering, and it's really hard for those enterprises to defend themselves. And believe it or not, those groups are, they're so young people, in those groups. They're teenagers. They're so smart people. And we have to be ahead of them. And, and there's no driver license to go into those groups, to be honest. So they're like, everyone can go, basically. So as you see here, like 61% of the organizations say they're struggling to secure the hybrid workforce because we're in the hybrid model. Everybody is working from different locations. And then when we look at the threat landscape, continues to escalate. So there is a lot of massive attack vectors that we are talking about, and we are talking about these attack groups. We basically see 53% of the organizations turn to AI for more effective threat detection. A lot of machine learning, a lot of analytics. And we talk about AI, right? It's a very most popular topic lately. So, but what we're actually talking about here is the more machine learning, right? So, and more automation, right? And to make it simpler and easier for the customers. And another challenge is that what we are seeing is that every year, so we assume that security operations centers, the number of the analysts are increasing, but they're not, because we talk about it that, CISOs, security leaders, they want to do more with less. And we have basically a skill shortage, talent shortage. So it's making it more and more difficult to defend the environment. So I just want to show you a little example here. So this is a day in the life of the Palo Alto Network Security Operations Center, SOC. So we have our own security operations center. And we got these, all these numbers from them, essentially. And they're basically seeing almost 40 billion events in one day. So it's massive, it's huge, right? You can't keep up with that. And then out of the box, the alerts coming from the network security, coming from cloud security, coming from endpoint security. So there is 11 million alerts, incidents. It's still high, it's not sustainable for those analysts. And then when we do kind of, some data stitching and some analysis and trying to find those potential threats, then it basically, we do some stitching, grouping, and all those fun things, and then it goes down to 133 alerts. It's actually manageable, that number, right? So, and that is what the organizations wants to see. And from there, we talk about automation. How many of them can be automated? How many of them can be basically doing those tasks, those workflows in a playbooks, right? And then we do that. And then if you look at the numbers, after those automation stuff, we can come to the single-digit number, 7 incidents. That's where we want to come, so that those analysts can really focus on the high-risk incidents. So that is the goal. And average, if look at the organization, it takes weeks, months, days, so many times to detect those threats, believe it or not. But the average is that if we make the automation piece, then it can go mean time to detect the 10 seconds, and we can shut down everything in 1 minute. So, and cybersecurity transformation has become imperative for organizations to elevate their security today and ensure that they're ready for what is next. What if they don't do that? The cost of the inactions are really risky. So there's reputational, there's operational, there's financial, and nobody wants to be on the news with the data breach, or nobody wants to be on the news with the ransomware attacks, right? So, and if you look at the operational disruption, I want to give an example for that. And I think most of you are seeing that during the pandemic. Always watching the news, seeing those ransomware attacks are increasing. The ransomware attacks to those hospitals doubled, in the last couple years. And basically, when the ransomware attack happens, it can disrupt the patient plan, treatment plan, and the communications, and all those critical tools. And it also includes the healthcare of the plan for the patients, or their MRIs, X-rays, or communication between different departments, or communication between the hospitals, right? So in the past, like if we think about before the pandemic, we were talking about always the privacy issues. Our identity information, SIM like number, or I don't know, like the health card information, right? But now we're talking about the safety issue, and all of us in the room, they're actually affecting our lives, and which is very, very scary. So, and then financial and business impacts. So from the survey that we got, it's 2.4 million. The Forrester survey says that. It's a huge number. And those attackers, basically, they really purely want to get in for those financial purposes. And these attacks are uninsurable because those, like, every time those cyber attacks, like, disrupts and continues to grow, they're really uninsurable. And from, obviously, to do that transformation, all of the organizations, they need to get away those legacy architectures. I mean, this is the first thing that they have to do it. Because if you want to transform, if you want to really keep up with the changes, if you want to do consolidation, so that is the first step. And when we look at and when we speak with the customers, they usually say, oh, I want the best breed of the cloud like solution, the best network security, or so on. In reality, that is not the case anymore. So when you want to work with someone, or when you want to work with partner with any organization, you want to have the best of breed and the platform approach, end-to-end security architecture. They have to be talking to each other. So, and then you can basically accelerate your IT business programs. You don't want to slow down your business. You want to be more productive and like an operational perspective as well. So, and with that, there's a lot of questions coming up. Like, so how do I start my cyber transformation, right? How do I go forward? And how do I make this consolidation? So with that, I want to introduce our Senior Director of System Engineering, Victor Tavares, to join me here, and we're going to talk about consolidation. Thank you. I'll just go that side. So, welcome, Victor.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today.
Very happy to be here today. Glad to see everybody still hanging around. It's 4:30, I think, and
yeah.
We still have a good audience in the room. That's great.
Yeah.
We're between the roses, not the ferns, so that's interesting.
It doesn't smell, though. So, okay. So, Victor, so we talk about, I mean, you were in the room already, so we talk about the key trends about the cybersecurity, right? The challenges that, like, with the changes happening in the world, right? So I just want to get your insights about why is consolidation so important for security teams?
So I think, I mean, we're all talking about consolidation. I think one of the main reasons today, and I see this from across many different customers. I have responsibility for all of Canada, but this is a common theme that we're seeing not just in Canada, but it's a worldwide, responsibility now for us to have serious conversations about consolidation. When we talk about consolidation, I think the obvious conversation is, how do I save money? How do I reduce my spending? How do I still provide good security while not having to buy so many things and run so many things? And I think that's a very obvious conversation. A second part, though, that's just as important and maybe even more important when we talk about cyber is that you cannot compromise the service that you provide, i.e. protecting your environment, protecting the data, protecting your users, because you're cutting costs. But like anything else, it's managing risk. So you have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, if I'm looking at consolidation as a very serious challenge, just like at all the other parts of my business, I'm being challenged to do more with less, but how do I then ensure that I'm not putting my organization at risk? You have to ask hard questions about what consolidation really means from a cyber point of view. And so there's the easy thing of, well, we have too many tools, having lots of vendors makes things complicated, it makes it more expensive. We already know that there's a challenge with people, so hiring more people to run more products, more tools, more environments is just not feasible, right? Especially since finding good security people. And as I'm sure we've had lots of conversations over the day today around why it's so important that we continue to develop amazing people in cyber, that's a challenge. But then from the perspective of a technologist, right? So I run engineering, and we look at it from the point of view of what other conversations do we have when we talk about consolidation. There's an argument to be made that when you consolidate, and it goes back to your point about a strong foundation, you want to have something that you can build on top of as you continue to innovate, because the attackers don't stop, your business doesn't stop, technology continues to develop in ways that you never planned for. Security can't be, and this is the problem that we have in the security space, we can't be the blocker. We can't be the people that always say no to everything. We have to find ways to consolidate, save money, reduce the risks, get more out of our people while also getting better capability and be more nimble and a little more agile. So there's an argument to be made that consolidation actually provides better security because you're simplifying the environment. You're doing more with less, but you're also getting more out of the less. And that's key, right? And that's the magic in terms of the argument to be made around, I have a small number of really great people. I need to get them to do more important work. That means they need to be working with less things. And that's where consolidation as a security concept comes in.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah, as we talk about it, it's really making it simpler for the customers, right, for the organizations. So, because there's a lot of things happening and there's talent shortage. So you actually made a good comment about that. So the other thing it comes to my mind, like when it comes to consolidation, where do you think organizations start?
That's a great question because I think, we have that conversation with a lot of customers, especially now. I think often we start the conversation with what can we do, especially if they're already a customer. If they're already a customer, then we can have good conversations around, okay, what things are you doing with our products and our technology that we can streamline? What can we do to get more efficiencies? I think that's a straightforward conversation. When we get into environments where they're trying to move forward, but they still need to be conscious of the cost and the way they're going to consolidate, we start asking questions about how are they doing things, right? So one of the questions is, when your users, as we discussed, are now working remotely, and now you're solving new kinds of problems that you probably didn't build your network to solve. How do we address that from a technology infrastructure point of view, not a product point of view, but how are you actually providing those capabilities, services? And so you'll hear a lot about things like zero trust, right? And when you talk about zero trust, it's not a product, it's not a thing that you build, it's a concept, it's a paradigm, it's a way that you're delivering secure services to your users, to your community, to your business partners, whoever it is, in a way that still allows you to do consolidation, meaning less tools, but you also allow them to still get the work done regardless of where they are. We talked a little bit about this, right? So zero trust could be as simple as understand your data, know where the data is. It's probably in cloud now. The reality is that the data center concept is probably going away if it's not gone already. It's probably not even your data. It's sitting in a SaaS service, so it's sitting in someone else's server somewhere. You have users who are working from their phone, working from home, working in cafes, sometimes working on other people's devices. It's not even their own device, so you have to worry about that. And then the applications, right? So the days of just having 2 or 3 services installed on a machine are long gone, right? Everything's web delivered, everything is SaaS delivered. So the idea of understanding what those users are doing and then how do you provide security is very important. And then how do you do that when you talk about it from a consolidation point of view? You have to look at zero trust is basically how do I get my environment that I already have to provide those 3 things? Visibility into the data and security into the data, visibility into the user and what they're allowed to do, and then the applications they're supposed to use. And then the consolidation discussion is how do we then allow you to do that everywhere in one simple way? Not with lots of products, not with like, oh, I have this thing for when you're working from home, and I have this other thing when you're in the office, and I have this thing that's for partners, and I have this other thing that's for users and that are wireless, that are guests. And then you have all these products and technologies that you have to manage. And then obviously the mistakes that happen most often in security is not hackers, believe it or not people attempting to do something. It's you made a mistake. You've misconfigured something. You left something open, right? And then that's where the flaws are taken advantage of, and then you have a breach, right? And then sometimes it's as simple as users not being able to do the right things. You haven't given them the tools. You haven't made it simple enough for them to actually get their job done. So they go and find other ways. They go and install other pieces of software. They'll use other tools, or they'll find ways to hack into the application they need to use without getting permission. That's really where it all comes down to. So consolidation is very important as part of the conversation around zero trust as we move towards this more simple model of letting people do their jobs. Right? It's not a place. We talked about it. You said it, which is very true. It's now an activity. Make them, be able to do their jobs securely and more easily. So that's what it is. And the conversations that have to happen there are really they're not down at the technical level, because you're not talking products really, you're talking about a change of mindset of how you're actually doing work. And that's very important. And that's why zero trust is so important. So if you hear zero trust, if you have conversations or you hear the buzzword, it's not a product, right? If anyone says it's a product, they're selling you something. They're not selling you something. The idea of zero trust is trying to change the way you think about the way you work and how you secure it.
Yeah. I always give the example when I talk to my customers. So, zero trust is a concept. So for me, as I said, like I've been working from home for a long time, and but I can still do my job when I'm at home and in a secure way. So, but if you look at the other workforces, right? The applications, right, like Office 365, Zoom, whatever the SaaS applications, they're not in the data center anymore, like during pandemic, right? So yes, some are still in the data center, but most of them are now in the cloud. So, and with that, obviously, we want to have the same security, same policy, right, when those users are accessing those applications. It doesn't matter, I'm in the office and the data center is there and I'm connecting, right? So, I have my multi-factor authentication, I have my threat prevention, I have my all that kind of stuff. But then if I'm at the coffee shop, whatever the policy the company gives you, they're actually going through the same thing. So we're basically not trusting anyone, any user or any application. So that is what we're trying to, I think, explain when we explain to the customers. So, so what are the benefits of the consolidation with Palo Alto Networks?
So I mean, again, we're a vendor, so we provide technology, we provide solutions, but we're also a large company, right? So we also are running our own technology. We're also a major target, right? Like banks are probably the biggest target for hackers because that's where the money is. But probably second to that is a big security vendor. Like that's, massive win. If you can hack a big security vendor like us or any of the others, that's a big win from a PR point of view. So of course we're under a lot of attacks. So when we look at the idea of, what we talk about with consolidation and simplifying the environment, and you saw the example with our SOC, right? Where we have a SOC and they're just part of the IT team, like any other company's IT team, and their job is to protect the users, us, the crazy people out in the world trying to do their jobs on the road. It really comes down to consolidating means that you have less things, which means you have less things to worry about. Your attack surface is smaller. You also have less need of a lot of people to do the work to maintain and protect that environment. But from a vendor point of view, even from the perspective of us providing solutions, it allows us to innovate more quickly. Because the less things you have, the less there is holding you back to change those things, right? So if you have a lot of products that all are somehow interrelated and somehow they all have to depend on each other, there's a lot of dependencies there, right? So that's a concept that even exists in software, right? You have, you want it to be loosely coupled. When they talk about loose coupling, you want things to be able to change without breaking everything. So when you consolidate, when you look at simplifying the environment, when you have less things that everything depends on, you can go faster because you can change things. So from our point of view, we can build products that can evolve much more quickly. We can have our users and our customers update more regularly because they aren't going to break as many things, right? We can have less people whose job it is to go and test everything all the time to make sure that nothing is going to break. And that all means you're going to have better security because you're going to always stay up to date. You're going to do more with less, but you're also going to evolve much more quickly. Because at the end of the day, security is not the end result. The business's goals are the end result. So whatever that business is, right? Or whatever the organization that's running something online is doing. So if you have security, you can actually do more because you trust your security. You know your users are beginning to be able to do what they need to do, and you can continue to evolve and innovate. And that's the same for us. We actually see that as a massive benefit for us.
Yeah, perfect. And I actually want to also add on top of this because I'm in the channel, so working with like many partners like in Canada, and I've been in the channel for a long time. So we also, partner with our partners. So in this journey, because when it comes after, selling the solution or whatever, but then there's a piece that the implementation piece, there's managed services piece. So, and then we talk about the consolidation, at our side, but they have to also kind of ramp up with the consolidation. And it doesn't happen in one day, so it also comes with a lot of work. So working on the security practice, or partnering with each other, enabling them, and making some experts, right, in the different like areas. So I think partners also makes a lot of role in this, and in terms of managing those solutions and implementing those solutions. Yeah. So in 5 years, what does the future look like for those who have gone to consolidation and who have not? So I know it's a little bit hard question, but I guess what is going to be those results? Like I show already, like in the costs are higher, right? There's a lot of breaches happening. There's a lot of like the work that is changing, like operational perspective or financial perspective. We know those kind of like perspectives, but I want to just get your ideas.
It's a good question. I mean, I get a chance to kind of take a guess. So, I mean, I can tell you some of the things that are for sure not going to happen in the future if people don't start thinking about simplifying their environment, looking at how they continue to innovate, cutting their costs, because there's no unlimited spend that's happening, especially in a cost center like security. Security is normally not seen as the place where business is made. It's an insurance policy. It's a way to protect the business often, right? But the reality is it actually is a way for us to go faster. I like to use the analogy of, and I've used this before, but car brakes, right? If you have a car and you don't have brakes, brakes is the security policy. Brakes is the way I can save myself. If there's something bad happening, I can stop. But the truth is, if you don't have brakes in a car, you can't go fast because you're scared, because you're gonna have to go slow enough that you can hit the wall and stop. If you go fast around a corner and you have no brakes, you're gonna crash. If you get brakes and you trust those brakes and they do a good job of providing you the security you need to protect yourself, you can go as fast as you want around those corners. You can actually take chances. You can start racing. You can leave everyone else behind if they don't have the technology you have. So the argument that I make about why it's so important that you continue to look at simplifying the environment, and consolidation is the discussion, and it's the opportunity, right? There's now the opportunity to have serious conversations about either in your own organization, using the cost cutting and the challenges that we have around spending, and even the challenges we have around too many products, to use it as an opportunity to set you up for the next 3 to 5 years, where you can do things like get away from old technology. I've often seen this. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I still run into environments that have been built 20, 15, 10 years ago, and they want to do more, but they can't because the technology holds them back. They're not allowed to change. Their business depends on things, mainframes, little old servers that they can't even get hard drives for anymore, and they're scared to make change, so they're held back. Whereas new organizations, or organizations that are willing to take that risk of changing things and simplifying, they can go a lot faster. So there's that for sure. The other thing is, if we look at where the technology is going, and what I mean by technology, I mean like the technology used to run IT, the transformation, when we talk about digital transformation, it's all cloud, right? It's all getting away from locations like data centers and places where work happens. It's also taking advantage of all of the advances in technology around machine learning, AI, data analytics, all the advanced capabilities that you have to develop more quickly, so agile development. All those things are amazing, but if you don't have an infrastructure that can do that for you, in 5 years, you're still doing what you did today, right? Or maybe even less because you're now falling behind. Whereas in 5 years, if you have thoughtfully worked through the opportunity to consolidate, the opportunity to simplify, build that very strong foundation that you said, you can then use that as a launching pad to do all the amazing things that are going to be, who knows what's going to be going on in 5 years. Maybe we are going to have AI machine learning in our phones where, it'll, basically the, ChatGPT type thing with you. Maybe we'll have, like in the movies, a little assistant robot that walks around with you and has conversations with you. Who knows? It's all possible. I mean, it's pretty amazing what we can get out of ChatGPT and some of those other, like large language kind of models that exist today. So that's all possible, I think.
Yeah. I hope we don't have any more pandemics. So
yeah, no more pandemics, though. Let's try not to have any more pandemics.
That, right? There's a lot of changes already. Yeah. So I think the last one is that because we talk about now AI, so we can't really get away from AI,
yes.
right? So, and how does consolidation help for AI-based attacks?
So this is a very important question, and the reason it's important is because I think we talk a lot about AI. It's one of those dangerous buzzwords that everybody wants to talk about. And if you really think about it, it's not complicated. It's math, it's science, it's statistics, right? It's just algorithms that process data. And so the key here is data, right? And so, from a security perspective, there's so much potential to use behavior analytics, data analytics, machine learning, teaching, models so that it knows what bad looks like versus good, and even full advanced, artificial intelligence where it actually does, proactive guesses as far as what can be bad and what can't be bad. So there's a lot of opportunity to do things. The problem is it all depends on data, right? And the way that we've built networks, I mean, it's, again, you've heard the statistics and we talked a little bit about it. The average company has 50 different applications. All of them are creating logs. All of them are creating interesting data. They all solve interesting problems. So it's not a question of whether or not that individual application is good or bad. It's, can I take advantage of what it gives me, visibility, security controls, and then lots of data that I can manipulate and use to learn from in a meaningful way. You can't if it's all over the place, right? And then if you look at the technology, we all talk about SIM, the SIM, security incident event management tools, right? But they're complicated. Again, it becomes, integration. Then the integration challenge becomes the end user or the customer's problem. So if you have 50 products, 50 companies are all working together to help you put it together. It's you and your team that have to put it together. And then, so if you don't get the data in one place, you don't have the ability to then understand context based on that data, you're never going to be able to take advantage of what machine learning and AI and all those things give you. So the first thing is consolidation, while cost cutting and doing all the things we've talked about, it also means that now you have less things producing data in a more centralized way that allows you to then learn from it, right? And then if you take that step and you actually have that provide value back, you can start taking advantage of the tools that are being developed to provide context-specific, capabilities for you. So it's like it knows your environment, it knows what normal looks like, it knows when users log in and log off, it knows when someone in the middle of the night is trying to do something that's bad because it's learned from your environment. But even more important than that is we go back to the point you made about best of breed versus platforms. If you take it to the next step, what's better than having your own data? It's having everyone's data, right? So if the world is learning together, right, and this is something that you've seen from Google and all these other companies, like search is great because everyone's providing data back into the search engines. Same thing is true for security. If everyone is providing visibility into all the bad things that are happening, whether you're in Toronto and you're logging in Toronto, or you're a different company in Asia somewhere and you've had something happen that we see, that allows companies like us who have the visibility of 100,000 different customers providing petabytes of data to somehow pull that information together and then provide value back. So it's never going to happen if everyone's just running around trying to do little things. And we've actually had some customers try to build their own data lakes and try to do their own, because it's interesting and you have smart people on staff, but it doesn't scale. It'll never be what it truly can be unless you really work together and have everything come together. And the only way you're going to be able to bring everything together is to make your smart people on your team not waste their time managing lots of products and doing little low-value work, but you get the low-value work taken away with tools. You make the tools automated. You make the automation solve a lot of the basic problems, and then you get all your smart people doing the cool things, which is actually being proactive in securing yourself and then doing things that's going to make the business successful. So it has to happen. And the reality is, I think most companies are going to buy a lot of things that say they have AI and machine learning and never see the value of it because they've never built the foundation, like you said, to be able to then do the right things and in 3 to 5 years actually see the value of all those things. So it's really, really important. And it's the kind of thing that all of us, right, whether you're in an implementer role, an operator role, or you're in some sort of executive role and you're trying to think about these things, those decisions you're making now with the opportunity to do things like consolidate now because cost cutting and simplifying technology will have a benefit over time. It's not a decision you do now and then in a year you start spending again, because I see that sometimes where it's like, our budgets are tight this year, but we're going to buy everything next year. It's like you continue the problem, right? You're still doing the same thing.
And I think the AI is already, it's not new. I mean, it's all about data, I feel like. And then, every day we use our, a lot of applications on our phones, right? I always say, even for my kids, think about the Instagram, right? I mean, you just scroll down and look at those reels and everything, and then it just tells you what to watch, right? Or you're like Netflix, right? You watch different kinds of movies, whatever, and then it shows you what to watch. Or if you look at the Spotify, right? It always tells me what podcasts that I have to, listen, or what songs I'm going to listen. So basically, it's there. I mean, data is there. It's artificial intelligence. It was always there, and it's basically evolving. And the piece that we're talking about, I guess, we're more talking about the consolidation of the data, not the products. Mm-hmm. But I think in the future, it's coming to a different phase. That's what I'm saying. And I think it's exciting. So I want to know more about it too. So. And I think, well, thank you so much. I mean,
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So I do want to have the opportunity to maybe listen to you share a little bit about your thoughts. So you've been doing this for a while. You're in a great role, with a cybersecurity focus. I'm curious if there's anything you can share, your thoughts, maybe some of the things that you've learned, in the time that you've been doing this role and working in cyber. And I think that's very important for us to share with the folks here in the room. Just maybe you can tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are and what you think is important in terms of just the journey that you're on.
Sure. So I think there's a couple things that I want to just, share. So first, 10 years ago, and I moved this country 13 years ago, I would say, to Canada. So you can really see my accent. So, and 10 years ago, when I look at the cybersecurity, there was only 10% of the women in the cybersecurity field. And it's really true, that number. And if you look at 3 years ago, because we had the pandemic and so on, and I think everybody is more aware watching that news, right? And it's little over 20%. So cybersecurity, I think, is needed, the changes that we are actually happening in the world, right? So, and there's a lot of talent shortage. There's a lot of skills shortage. And I think this gap, so we can fill in this gap, the only thing that women can come to the cybersecurity field. It's not gonna, close that gap. Otherwise, we can't really reach to the 40% or 50% of the number. That's what I think. And the second piece is that, women, I think, bring a lot of innovative ideas to the table. And I feel like cybersecurity is like a, puzzle, and we need women to complete that puzzle, right? We need all of this women. I'm sorry, guys. I know you guys are here, but... So, and then the third thing is that leaders. So my leader is just next to me. I think they really want the diversity and the equity and the different backgrounds, right? It doesn't matter what ethnicity you're coming from. I think success comes with diversity of thoughts. That's what I think. And the other piece is that I would say, I see a lot of women in this room, and I think you already made the big first step coming here. So and the last piece is that I think just be brave, get out of your comfort zone. That's what I did today, so I'm in front of you. And we're all here to lift each other up. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're good. So let me see. Yeah. Do we have any questions or I know it's a bit yeah.
One up there.
I think we talk a lot about defense in depth, right? So how does consolidation and defense in depth hold together, and how do we achieve You
want to answer that?
You go ahead.
So defense in depth. Everyone familiar with the idea of defense in depth? It's one of the common terms that we talk about in cybersecurity. The problem with defense in depth is that it's often used as an expense in depth, meaning like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it wasn't unusual for us to say, well, we need two different firewall vendors. They're both doing the same thing, but it's two products. So just in case there's bugs in one, the other one can provide protection. And I think that's fair. However, the reality is that creates a big problem with vendors. It creates a big problem with the sprawl of tools. You're not getting more value often. If you look at especially the more commodity aspects of technology, they're all very similar. If you look at the reports, even ours, right? If you look at the firewall comparisons, they're all plus or minus 1, 2, 3% efficacy from each other. So you're not really gaining a lot. You're gaining more complexity, cost, operational challenges. You have to hire more people. There's more tools. So the idea of defense in depth, while an important one from a risk management point of view, I think the idea of how we do it is wrong. I think if you look at defense in depth by zero trust segmentation, where you're not trusting anything, not building layers. We used to build DMZs, right? It was like, oh, this is the hard outer shell, this is what you got to pass, and then once you're inside, it doesn't matter. And then people realize, oh, that inside is too weak, so we got to put another layer, that's defense in depth, and then you get past those two, you're inside anyways, right? And the reality is that those days are gone. The individual, right, the application that individual is using is the DMZ now. So the idea of defense in depth is just a concept that really is hard to argue, because what are you going to do? You're going to have 3 different laptops running 3 different tools to protect that user from accessing applications. It doesn't exist anymore, right? There's diversity of tools to make it so that from an availability point of view, it makes sense. So it's very common, for example, to have applications that run in Google and Amazon and Microsoft Azure, but that's not necessarily security. That's more about availability, so that if there's an outage, which is part of the CIA, right? So you want availability as part of your goals, but it's not truly the same concept of what defense in depth was giving. So I think you don't hear a lot about it anymore because it's really not that viable. We do the same things in different ways. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions actually based on the conversation which we had the discussion. So being a part of CSUD, when I look at my cybersecurity posture all over an organization, so since pandemic started.
Is it okay if you
Hold the
use
mic.
the microphone?
Yep.
So since pandemic started, at that point of time, organization implemented certain controls, got in contact with lots of service provider to mitigate certain risk on high priority basis. Now, when I look at that cybersecurity infrastructure currently, it is a mess. Lots of service providers, lots of different tools, technologies, and even not sure whether those are appropriate as per the current requirements or not. So how consolidation can help in that phase, to handle this particular challenge? Along with that, being in financial service sector, privacy is something which comes as, and data privacy particularly comes as biggest challenge right now. And changing regulations, Law 25, and lots of things GDPR are coming in picture, and requirements are being toughest for organizations, particularly small organizations. So cost comes as a huge factor, which small organizations are not able to tackle because they don't have that much bandwidth to spend.
Yes.
So how consolidation can help in that phase
Managed services. You want to talk
I
about
think
partners?
while moving from on-prem infrastructure to on-cloud.
Okay.
So this is particular phase I'm particularly talking about my organization and I'm dealing with.
It's a common problem. So, you
So
wanna
I
talk
think the first thing that, I think there's a couple things here. So you started with the 50, 60, like we talk about different tools, right? So it's, first of all, it's really hard to manage. Like I get it. And that's why we all talk about that automation stuff. So the security operation centers, right? So the first thing that I would say. And also I mentioned about our partners. Yes, we are the vendors. We have those solutions, the cloud solutions, network solutions, whatever. But then we have our partners that really can help you to implement those solutions and also manage those solutions. So it doesn't matter if you're small, medium, or large enterprises, there is like different partners that can help you for that. That's the one piece I would say. The second, you want to add?
Yeah, so
anything?
to extend that point, so that's the first thing, right? Especially for small organizations.
Yeah.
We're in Canada, so the majority of organizations in Canada are going to be the mid-sized business or smaller, so they're not going to have a SOC, they're not going to have big teams. So of course we depend on our partners. So one of the things that is true for partners, as well as everything that we've described for you as a user, is that simplified technology, consolidated technology means that they can simplify their services, right? So you don't have the situation where it's like, oh, you need to pay for 50 products with us. It's like you can get now a service that's delivered that's going to give the same capabilities as if you were building it yourself. That leads to the privacy point, which is it's very difficult to have a privacy conversation when you don't know where the data is, when you don't know how the services work, and you don't know what they're collecting. Less things means it's a simpler conversation. We get into this, for example. So we deliver some of our products through cloud. That means we are the ones that provide the service, and the customer essentially is just receiving a service from us. They're using the service, but it's cloud delivered. So it's our responsibility to provide strong reporting on what our infrastructure does from a privacy point of view, because we have to meet the GDPR requirements, we have to meet HIPAA, anything that really requires us to show how we're collecting data and how we're using it, it becomes our problem, right? It's the same thing with integration. The more things you have that become your problem as the end user to put together, then it becomes your challenge to figure out, okay, what does this mean and how do I then ensure that the data is in good places? If you externalize that, you're shifting the risk. I mean, that's one of the common conversations I have with CISOs is that they want to shift the risk away from their organization to others, which is why SaaS is so popular, right? You know, if you're getting a SaaS service delivered from Google, Google has teams of people whose job it is to look at privacy and figure out how it works and then document it. And you have maybe part-time, one person, 1 hour, you know, a month to look at it and think about it. So you're just going to get better, but it does require that us, the actual, you know, consumers of those services need to be aware. We need to ask the questions. We need to understand the challenges, right? We don't get away from still being responsible for our own security. It's a shared responsibility model. We still have to do the homework, but we don't have to do the work, right? So we have to hold them accountable, you know, make sure our contracts, you know, take into consideration whatever our requirements are depending on our industry, know what to ask, audit them regularly, right? Get people on staff whose job it is to protect your interests, but you don't have to hire 50 people to build things, which is the nice thing. So take advantage of managed services, take advantage of those service providers that are doing the work to get better. Stay away from the guys who still want to sell you old stuff and charge you for like logs. You know, nobody wants that anymore, who cares? There's still companies that exist that just do logging, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's not interesting. So that's how I would answer that question.
So in continuation with that, now, as I mentioned, like when organization is transitioning from on-prem infrastructure to cloud,
Yep.
One biggest challenge which I'm particularly facing right now is handling audits from client and then managing internal infrastructure in line with the industry standard. For example, we are SOC certified, we are ISO certified. But when I look at ISO right now, this is the transition period for ISO from 2013 standard to 22 standards, where in 22 standards, cybersecurity is one of the major components which organization have to deal with. Now, when a transition is happening from on-prem to cloud infrastructure, a service provider can help in managing those audit pieces.
So you're asking a lot of things. I will happily stay after the session and have a conversation with you because I think we're wrapping up. I got the warning already, and I think, I don't know if we have any time for any more questions if it's a simple question, but I do want to give you a chance to say thank you and to end the meeting.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining. But yeah, we can definitely
Yeah,
connect.
I'm going to stay. I'll answer that question. I'm not trying to dodge the question.
I'm here too.
I'll work with you on that, yeah.
So any other quick question or?
I think we're good.
Thank
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good job.